So imagine you are Pharaoh in 15th century BC for a moment. In the Egyptian religious belief system, you are a god. You are a descendant of Ra, divine, holy, powerful. And practically, this seems to be true in your life. You have the most powerful army in the world. You have eventually defeated every people that you've ever come into contact with. And remember, you also view wars as not just a war between your two armies, but between the two gods of each nation. Whoever wins, their god is really the one that wins. Well, that means your god, and you, as a god, must be more powerful than the gods of all these other nations because you've defeated all these other nations, including the Hebrews. They've been slaves for well over 100 years in your country. And so you've obviously defeated their God and kept their God in check. Then this 80-year-old man, who was the adopted brother of your father, comes to you and he says, the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, orders you to let the people go. How do you think you would respond with that background? Well, I think we'd all respond like Pharaoh responds here in this story. Flat out refusal. You see, he answers the question of who is God and who am I by saying God, the God of the Hebrews, is just some tribal deity that my great-grandfather defeated and I have been able to keep in check for my entire reign. And who am I? I am a God too, more powerful than their God it seems. So why should I do what their God says? You see, his beliefs about who he is and who God is explain all that he does in this story. He refuses to let the people go. And then, not only that, but he forces them to double their workload to make bricks without straw. Go read the rest of chapter 5 after this. He's basically sending them a message. He's saying, you no longer belong to Yahweh. You belong to me. I defeated him. You belong to me. See, Pharaoh's demanding everything from them because he thinks that Yahweh, the true God, is just some other tribal deity that poses him no threat. And he thinks he can demand everything that the Hebrews have to offer. You see, Pharaoh's like one of the kings in Psalm chapter 2. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. Now, it's pretty bold and amazingly prideful. Yet before we look at Pharaoh and think and judge him too harshly, let's remember what I talked about yesterday. He's committing the same sin that all of us commit pretty much on a daily basis as we answer these questions. He's committing the sin of trying to be God of his life. And that's what we all do when we sin. When we choose to disobey God, what we're basically saying is, God, I know you've said this, but I don't want to do that. I want to be God of my life here. Let's take, for example, something seemingly little like the sin of worry. Now, I'm not saying that all concern is sin, because not all concern is sin. Some concern is righteous and good. If, for example, your brother or sister is sick and you're not concerned, or if your friend's salvation means no more to you than the weather, or if you're not worried about people being treated equally in our country and in the world as images of God, that's a real problem. Those things should concern us. But when we handle them righteously, we know that we really can't handle them at all. And we turn to God and we take them to God and lay those burdens at his feet as often as it takes for us to remind us that he is in control, not us. That is God-centered concern. But if worry captures our hearts and keeps us from looking to God, then it becomes sin. And it's us basically saying to God, God, I'm going to handle this one. I got it. I'm going to handle this one my own way. I don't need you here. I'm going to take over being God of my life here. That is man-centered. It denies God's gracious presence in our lives, and it's us trying to face hardship on our own as if we don't have him, or as if he doesn't care, or as if we can be gods of our lives. Yet that's not the right answers to who God is and who I am. Who is the Lord? He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. So we don't face hardship alone. He is Jehovah Jireh, which means the Lord will provide, so we can trust him to take care of every situation that concerns us. We are his sheep. And he loves and feeds and cares for us always. So when we see Pharaoh answering these questions in these ways, by making himself a god, that should make us look at ourselves and ask the question of, when I sin, where am I trying to be God of my life? And what do my sins tell me about the way I am answering the question of who God is and who I am? You guys think about that, and I'll see you again tomorrow.